My name is Johan Gefers. I'm an entrepreneur. I had founded my company in Vancouver. I was living in Vancouver in 2012. And soon after I founded my company, I realized we need a good ecosystem. Our chances of success would be greatly improved if we were part of a good ecosystem. And the obvious choice would have been Silicon Valley. But unfortunately, the US government was not very friendly to crypto technologies at the time. So then I thought, well, let's look for other parts in the world where there might be a good ecosystem. And there was some activity in a few places like Amsterdam and London. There was some in Japan, the Mt. Gox, and a few other places. When I looked into it, there was no ecosystem anywhere. There were isolated companies or people interested. And so I thought, well, then we need to build an ecosystem. And so then I started scouting for locations where we could, that would be good for building an ecosystem like this. And I created a short list of potential places. And at the end of the day, Singapore and Switzerland were at the top of that shortlist. I actually traveled around the world to these different locations to see them in person, because internet research only gets you that far. And I met with authorities also in different places to see what the conditions are like, the regulatory environment and so on. And after doing this research, I decided Switzerland was the best location. And so I was still based in Vancouver, Canada at the time. And then in May 2013, I got in touch with the embassy in Vancouver, and they connected me to Switzerland Global Enterprise. Switzerland Global Enterprise is a public-private partnership here in Switzerland that is focused on promoting Swiss business to the world and attracting other companies from overseas to Switzerland, so in both directions. So in my case, they were interested in us coming to Switzerland. And they interviewed me for quite a long time, about an hour, from the New York office. That was Caroline Blaser and her colleagues. And then on the basis of those interviews, they created a project document, a Word document, that summarized what we wanted to do. And this document was then shared with different cantons in Switzerland. Actually, they shared with all the cantons. My marketing proposition to Switzerland Global Enterprise was that these new technologies, Bitcoin and other crypto technologies, held the potential to reinvent Switzerland as the financial center of the future. And the analogy that I used was the watch industry, the Swiss watch industry. Switzerland also for centuries had the world's leading watch industry by far. And then with the invention of digital watches in Japan, like Seiko and Casio and so on, this put the watch industry under pressure. This started in the 1970s and the 1980s. And it was a big problem. And then Nicholas Hayek came up with the Swatch concept. And that saved the Swiss watch industry. They could reinvent themselves as the watch industry of the future, to still remain attractive and cool to the young generation with all these digital watches around. So that was a success story. And so I said, we can do the same for the Swiss financial industry. The old model clearly would not be sustainable. It was already disappearing. But we could bring these new technologies and create Switzerland as the financial center of the future. So this really got their attention. I came to Switzerland at the end of June 2013 and started meeting. I had a fully packed schedule that was set up by Switzerland Global Enterprise, who I just have to say is a fantastic organization. They really open doors and connect you to people throughout Switzerland and make it much easier to set up and so on. They connected us to accounting companies, to lawyers. They offered to introduce us to other startups like Google and whoever else that we wanted to meet. And, foreign companies that had settled here so that they could tell us firsthand what is it like to set up in Switzerland. So really a great service. So they set up all these appointments, and so I met with the different cantons, and it was quite an interesting experience. The cantons are really good at marketing themselves. And this shows the advantage of a competitive system, a decentralized competitive system, with each canton trying to attract business and trying to be attractive through various different ways. They all present themselves from the best side. So each time that I met with a canton, I would think, wow, this is clearly where we have to do this. I met with Zurich, and they told us all the great advantages of Zurich, the fantastic universities, the infrastructure, etc., etc. And then I went to Lucerne, and they said, well, we have all these different advantages, and we also have the lowest business taxes in Switzerland. And I went to Schaffhausen, and they said, well, they showed us the beautiful downtown, the old town of Schaffhausen, which is just charming, treated us to a very nice lunch. And they said, we will offer you 10 years of tax holiday. So no business taxes for 10 years. I thought, wow, okay, that's pretty good. And the same in Schwyz, very low taxes and some other advantages. Then I came to the canton of Zug and met with Guido Bulgaroni at the Zug Economic Promotion Office. And that was a unique experience compared to the other cantons. The other cantons all tried to say, all their advantages and special deals and offers that they would do for us. And Guido Bulgaroni said, we don't do any special deals. He just said this with a dry face, like, we're not going to do anything special for you. And that worked on me. And what he said is, we are already so good. In other words, our standard conditions are so good that we don't need to offer any special sweeteners. And he also said something interesting to me. He said the Lucerne might have the lowest business taxes at the moment, but first of all, their personal taxes aren't that low. A lot higher than Zug. And if you are going to be there not just as a letterbox company, but a real company with employees and office and so on, those employees have to pay taxes. And so you've got to look at the whole picture. And secondly, Lucerne doesn't have a very strong financial position. So this is 10 years ago. And he said their low taxes, business taxes, will not be sustainable. They will be forced to raise them. And now, with 10 years hindsight, this is exactly what happened. And he said, Zug has such good conditions and is stable and has a lot of money in the bank. At that time, it was about 1 billion francs, which is about $1 billion, which is also the case now. And he said, we can sustain the policies that we have. So this is not just for now or a few years. This will be like that in the future. So that impressed me. And the other thing why I didn't, for example, go to Schaffhausen with a 10-year tax holiday and so on, is personally, I take a long-term view. And I wasn't just looking at this for my company, I was also looking at this for me personally. I had lived in a few different places in the world, and I had experienced how hard it is to integrate yourself. It takes a lot of work, years of work. And of course, some expats choose not to do that. But then you don't really feel like you're part of the community. And when I did my research, I said to myself, this is going to be the last move that I'm going to make. And so I need to choose carefully the business aspects as well as the personal aspects. The whole package has to work. And so I chose Switzerland for good. And when I was looking at cantons, I also wanted to choose the canton for good. I didn't want to, be in Schaffhausen for 10 years and then, see what's the next cheapest tax after 10 years and then move again and then maybe go to Ireland or, some other tax haven. That's disruptive to the company, and it's just not the way I think. I want to be part of the community and happily pay taxes in an environment where you can actually see that those taxes are used well, and it's used to produce great infrastructure, good education system, etc., etc. So that's why we chose Zug. And I'll mention one other point for why I chose Zug. When they said we don't do special deals, I said that clinched the deal for me, just that one thing. Because other than me founding this crypto company, my lifelong interest has been in ecosystems, healthy ecosystems. So whole societies, which is also incidentally what my new startup is about. But so I was always looking at the whole ecosystem. And in those studies over the years, the factor that I identified that was most responsible for causing the downfall of social systems and societies was special deals for special interests. So when Zug said, we have the same conditions for everybody, no special deals for special interests, I thought, wow, this is my philosophy. This is the kind of canton I want to be in and support. Yeah, so we decided to use Zug. When I say we, that was me, my company. And so we chose Zug. That was in early July 2013. And then I created a marketing document in which I summarized the research that I'd done, which had started some months before that and continued with Switzerland Global Enterprise and so on. And I basically summarized all the advantages of, first of all, Switzerland, and secondly, Zug, and why we as a company had chosen Zug to be in, and why we would like other companies to come here as well, so that we could create an ecosystem and not just be one company. You get all the synergies of when you are a whole ecosystem, just like Silicon Valley. So that was the beginning of Crypto Valley, was in July 2013. So yeah, I mean, I think the process is similar to when you have a big steamroller. A big heavy thing that you're trying to get moving. In the beginning, you're pushing and pushing and pushing, and it seems like it just doesn't budge. Nothing's happening. And one's just got to persist, and eventually you start to get it rolling. And then it gradually starts picking up momentum, and then it gets easier and easier to get other people to start helping you to push. And eventually it gets so much momentum that it's almost like it's self-sustaining, and it becomes hard to stop. So that's essentially how this worked as well. In the beginning, well, actually we got moving surprisingly quickly. But that didn't happen by accident. It was through clear strategy and an enormous amount of work, and also relationships. Like I had mentioned the Switzerland Global Enterprise. They made lots of very valuable introductions. And then the Zug Economic Promotion Office also made valuable introductions. And then those started to get their own momentum through talking with different people and building relationships and so on. The whole thing started going. I can mention a few key developments along the way. So right in July, basically almost immediately when I'd arrived here, I was here for a day or two, and then I left on the 2nd of July to a conference in London, a Bitcoin conference. And there was a panel there that included Lucius Meiser, who is now the chairman of Bitcoin Suisse. And I enjoyed what he was saying. And so after the panel, we started speaking. And I heard that he's from Switzerland. And I said, oh, wow, that's great. I've just moved to Switzerland. So let's keep in touch and see if we can help each other. And so we started talking. And Lucius had the idea of creating an association that would promote Bitcoin. And in other words, the Bitcoin Association of Switzerland. And he said, you know, shall we do this together? And I said, yeah, absolutely. And so the two of us founded the Bitcoin Association Switzerland in October 2013. So a few months after we met. And we got a lawyer that, you know, created the entity for us and so on. And so we set that up and started having Bitcoin meetings. These meetups were happening in Zurich. And the first one was in October 2013. And that's where I met Niklas Nikolaisen. And Niklas had come here independently. So I had come here and he came here independently of each other. He had actually come to Switzerland in 2011, working for Credit Suisse in their IT department. But he was a Bitcoin fan early on, and he was thinking about, you know, how could he help Bitcoin along and maybe start a business in this direction. And then in August 2013, he created Bitcoin Suisse. He incorporated Bitcoin Suisse here in the canton of Zug. So he and I both came to the canton of Zug, so which tells you that this was a good jurisdiction to be in. So the very first time I met Niklas, he looked the same way he looks now. He was dressed the same way, with his long ponytail and his suit, and quite a character from day one. So that has stayed consistent right through the time. I had created a company in 2014, in June 2014, called Crypto Valley GmbH, so Crypto Valley Limited. And I used that company to also register the Crypto Valley trademark internationally to protect it so that we could make sure it's used for the ecosystem. But I was so busy with my own company and also a regulatory association and meeting a lot of people to help them come here and so on, that I didn't have additional time to really build that company up. So instead of doing that myself, we talked about what could we do as an industry to coordinate the marketing and build the ecosystem further. And the credit there goes to Thomas Ankenbrandt at the University of Lucerne. He took the initiative in, I think that was July 2016. And he said, hey, he reached out to a few people and he said, let's meet and see what we can do. And so we decided, yes, this is the right time now to do this. And so I used my marketing people inside my own company, and we created a website together with Vasily Suvorov. So Vasily and me worked together on that. And by the end of the year, we had a website. I had registered a number of domains and so on. And it took a number of meetings to decide who would make sense to have in that association as the board. And by the end of the year, we had everybody together. And in January 2017, we officially legally created the association. So that was the Crypto Valley Association. That was born in January 2017. And that was an important further step. So each one of these things helped to build the momentum. And that has grown. I mean, they are doing well. They've created a number of important things, including the Crypto Valley conference that happens once a year. Yeah, so I think in 2017, you can really say that the ecosystem had matured to the point that it was self-sustaining. Let me also say that the regulatory environment isn't clear internationally. So this is a big threat. In Switzerland, it's been clear for a long time, for several years, Liechtenstein as well. And there's a few other places where it's clear, like Singapore, that have created an attractive environment. But the United States has been very, very difficult. There are so many vested interests there that are trying to destroy crypto. Yeah, they've done a lot of damage. It's done a lot of damage. It's held the international ecosystem back. But I'm positive that we will succeed. And this is not just, positive hope. This is based on history. Superior technologies always win. Economics always wins. So in the short term, you can have political setbacks. But in the long term, the best technology, the best economics always wins. It's just a law of nature, and it makes sense. So these are temporary setbacks. And we just recently heard that the courts dealt a blow to the SEC regarding the first Bitcoin ETF, and Bitcoin's price is up quite dramatically recently. So I think this is where things start turning around. It's not going to be overnight. It's still going to be a long road, but I'm very, very sure that we will succeed. I'm very positive for Crypto Valley. But while I am positive, nothing happens by itself. You always need people that drive things forward. I have not been active myself in Crypto Valley for several years. I've started focusing on a new project, which I cannot talk about yet, but which I'm very excited about. But there are other people that have been very active and very successful. CV Labs with Matthias Ruch and Ralf Kapischnik and their teams have done a lot of good work here in Crypto Valley. They are essential to the ecosystem, and they've gone further. I met with them a few years ago, and I made a strong case for why we need to expand internationally if we want to succeed locally. And basically my argument is, if it's only one ecosystem, like here, Crypto Valley Switzerland, then you are very vulnerable. It's like any single point of failure. And if it's only one successful ecosystem, then you're going to generate envy from the rest of the world. Just like Switzerland as a financial center generated envy, and they eventually tried to squash it with abolishing banking secrecy and so on. So in the ethos of being decentralized, which we have in this industry, which incidentally is a key reason that I chose Switzerland as a center, because the Swiss system is so decentralized. So I made the case that we should create additional crypto valleys in other locations around the world, including in the major economies, like in the United States and in the UK and in China and so on. Because it's only if they see the benefits locally that they will not have an interest in squashing the industry. And then even if somebody should try to squash the industry, they would have 20 or 30 crypto valleys to squash instead of just one. Makes it much more difficult. So I'm very happy to see that that is exactly what is happening. Ralph Glabischnik, especially, has been active in Dubai. He's built up the crypto oasis in Dubai, which is successful. It's got lots of companies and they are really moving ahead. And CV Labs with Matthias Ruch, they have set up additional centers in Cape Town in South Africa, in Berlin in Germany, in Tel Aviv, Israel, in Portugal, and there'll probably be additional ones going forward. So this is exactly what is needed. So one needs to think big picture instead of just thinking short term and selfish, like we want to get all the benefits for ourselves here. One's got to look at the big picture and say, let's create lots of different centers and let them help each other and cross-fertilize. And that's what's happening, and that also makes me positive that this is here to stay. Crypto is here to stay. Absolutely. I mean, I actually think it's an astonishing success. When one is doing it at the time, then it seems slow. But when you look back and you compare with other stories like this in history, I mean, Silicon Valley took decades to develop, decades. And the reason it took so long is because there wasn't a driver pushing it. It just kind of spontaneously happened. So, one company set up, like Hewlett-Packard was a key company. And then later, another company set up. So just a number of companies set up, and then it gradually started developing into an ecosystem. But if you want to move more quickly, you need somebody who is consciously driving it, who's got a concept and is driving it. And so me developing that concept in 2013 and really driving it actively through clear strategy helped us to get there much faster. So July 2013, we had zero. There was nothing here, nothing. And within 5 years, we built into a world-leading ecosystem. That is just astonishing. It's absolutely amazing. So now it's 10 years later, it's 2023. We've got over 1,000 companies. We've got over 5,000 jobs. It's actually over 6,000. And if you look at the market capitalization of all the companies that are based here, and right now we're in a bear market, so all the valuations are down. But even with these down valuations, this is over $100 billion, way over that. And at the market peak, it was somewhere around $1 trillion US. So, I mean, to do that, and so at the market peak, that was just a couple of years ago or so. So in the space of less than 10 years, it was about 7 or 8 years to have over 1,000 companies, many thousands of jobs, and market value of around $1 trillion. That is just an astonishing success. And it certainly made the Zug canton successful. In other words, it's been a contributor to the economic success in recent years. They have been amazed at the amount of tax revenues they've generated. Above normal. The number of companies that are created here, even today, the tax the jobs, the tax revenues. So it's an important contributor to the canton of Zug. which is the most successful canton in all of Switzerland. So yeah, I definitely think it's a success story.